discussion is ineffective use of human resources. Before we try to understand what is human resource development, let us try to understand what is employment, what is the concept of employment. And what we find is that employment has been a major objective of planning in India, and it is possible to achieve full utilization of manpower resources only after a considerable period of development has already happened in the country. This is not so far true for India, and we find that in rural areas both unemployment and underemployment exist side by side. In the villages, unemployment ordinarily takes the form of underemployment. In many parts of the country, during the busy agricultural season, the shortage of labor may be there in the rural areas. But over the greater part of the year, a large proportion of the agricultural labor and other engaged in allied activities of agriculture are without continuous employment. The consequent drift of the workers from villages to the towns only serves to shift the focus of attention from rural areas to the urban areas. So let's try to understand what is unemployment. Unemployment can be defined as a state of worklessness for a person who is fit and willing to do work. It is a condition of involuntary and not voluntary idleness. Unemployment is that the person is interested in doing the work yet is unable to find the opportunity to do so. The reasons for unemployment can be due to age, physical disability, population, professional incompetence, technological advancement, economic and social factors. Now what has happened is that in Narega, for instance, this is one of the programs of the government of India. It's a flagship program in which 100 days of employment is guaranteed to the rural poor. In this program, there have been a lot of applications by people who are aged 100 and above. Now, for the criteria for finding employment under this program is that the person should be fit to do work. There was a lady who said she is fit to do the work. So if her age is above 100 years of age, how does it matter? So the policy guidelines do not indicate anything relating to age, but they do indicate that fitness of work is an important criteria. So many times unemployment may be because of the age factor, because of physical disability. The person is not able to move freely on his own account, so would not be able to be possible for him to do a lot of different kind of work. The population is too big, it is difficult to find work for everyone. Professional incompetence, that is the person may not be fit to do the kind of work that is allocated for him. It's more of a capacity building issue in that case. Then technology is advancing at such a fast rate that whatever is pertinent today, whatever is in vogue today may not be so tomorrow. So the people who are not able to keep pace with the technological advancement, they may also find themselves out of work because the work has overtaken their ability to be able to do so. Then there can be social and economic factors also which make unemployment a reality in India. In India, unemployment surveys are conducted by the National Sample Survey Organization, that is known as the NSSO. Now we have already discussed unemployment. We also in that context have to understand what is seasonal unemployment. Seasonal employment is, like for instance, certain industries and traders engage workers for a particular season. When the season has ended, the workers are rendered unemployed because there is no alternative work that is available for them. It is only limited to that particular season. So they are engaged for that particular point of time, and after the work is over, they are asked to go. So this is known as seasonal unemployment. A typical example would be the rain-fed agricultural farmers who remain out of work for 4 to 6 months in a year, because only during the monsoon season they would be able to grow any crop. The rest of the time of the year they are idle because the season is not favorable for agricultural growth. So what happens is, during the dry season there are no crops. That leads to seasonal unemployment, and this finally results in urban migration, because working only for 4 to 6 months in a year is not enough to sustain them throughout the year. So they have no other option. Because of lack of opportunities, employment opportunities in their own village, they are forced to migrate to the urban areas. Then we come to the other concept of disguised employment. Underemployment or disguised employment occurs when people are not classed as being unemployed, but they make very little from their job. It's a situation in which more people are involved in a certain job than are required, in which case the marginal productivity of labor is zero. I'll give you an example. Let us say there are 10 people working on a farm, and 2 people, if they are removed from it, yet the output stays the same. In that case, the marginal productivity, that is the increase in the productivity of those 2 people who have been removed, was actually zero. So it does not make a difference whether they were working or they were not working there, because the productivity, the output has stayed the same, irrespective of the fact that they are now not working there. Marginal productivity for those 2 workers was zero. So that is known as disguised employment, where an impression is generated that they are employed, but actually they are not employed because they are not really contributing to the output. It is meaningful to judge the amount of underemployment by the extent of additional work an individual may be willing to put in. It is particularly found in the rural areas that underemployment or disguised employment exists. This has led to the shift in the working population from the rural to the urban areas. Now let's discuss some of the employment statistics from 2000 to 2005. What we find is that the jobs grew 2.8% annually in 2000 to 2005, while the population grew by 2.35%. Unemployment also went up from 7.4% to 8.7% as more and more people sought work. More women and aged people have started working. Proportion of women working went up from 26% to 29%, and number of people aged 60 and above working were also increased by 4 million. That is, more and more people are interested in working. They are more and more seeking jobs. That includes women and people above age 60 and above. Casual workers, the proportion of the casual workers fell from 33% to 28%, and the proportion of self-employed increased from 53% to 57%. And during this time period, the real wages grew less than 1.3%, versus 2.8% in agriculture, 0.8% versus 4.2% in rest from 1999 to 2000 and from 2004 to 2005 than earlier. What it basically says is that although their wages increased, but the real wages, that is the wages which would actually help them to buy the goods and services, the real wages, they increased less 1.3% in agriculture and 0.8% versus 2.4% in the rest of the sectors. So basically, the increase in wages was not to the extent of the real increase in wages. The increase in wages was only marginal. Although the wages have increased, but the real wages have increased only marginally. Now, what is the employment scenario at present? There is a sharp increase in the number of people in search of employment. The official statistics show that 57 lakh people register at the employment exchanges every year. They are the people who are in need of a job, who are seeking employment. The Ministry of Labour and Employment estimates that by 2022, India would require 19 crore 87 lakh more people to work in the various sectors, of which auto sector itself would require 3 crore 52 lakh employees, health sector would require 1 crore 28 lakh employees, travel, aviation and logistics sector would need 1 crore 71 lakh people. The Indian economy is growing at the rate of 9% per annum, and this is also increasing the employment opportunities. However, we are also a nation of billion plus people. So if the population grows faster, then the employment would also increase, because the employment opportunities cannot grow to the same extent as the growth in population. So as the population goes on increasing, the unemployment rate would also increase. So according to the amount of increase in population, the employment opportunities do not grow to the same extent, and that leads to unemployment or disguised employment. We compare the figures from 1999-2000 to 2000-2005, and what we find is that the urban male employment has increased from 49% to 51.9%. At the same time, unemployment has also increased from 7.3 to 7.5%. Urban female employment has also increased from 11.1 to 13.3%. Unemployment of female workers has also increased from 7.2 to 8. Rural female unemployment, rural female employment has increased from 20.4 to 21.6, and the unemployment of rural females has also increased from 7 to 8.7. So what we find is, between the time period of 99-2000 to 2000-2005, that is in a span of 5 years, the employment has gone up. At the same time, the unemployment has also gone up. Both it is true for the urban as well as the rural sector. It is also true for the male workers. It is also true for the female workers in both the areas. So on one hand, the employment has increased. That means more job opportunities were created. So they were able to find employment. Yet at the same time, because of the increase of population, that is one of the reasons why the unemployment has also increased. So the employment opportunities do not increase in the same proportion as the increase in our population. What happens when rural people are not able to find employment? In that kind of situation, they migrate to the urban areas in search of a better life. So why do you think they do that? Migration is actually a survival strategy. Population pressure on finite resources encourages migration in search of employment. The households which are sending migrant labor have a higher income levels, and it has been found out from a study that it may be as much as 60% of the total annual income, which is a very significant increase for a rural household. So for them it is a very profitable and the only desirable outcome, because they are not able to find employment opportunities in their own village. So the option left for them is to migrate to the urban areas. Now this migration can be rural to rural areas also, that is from one village to another village they can shift. That happens during the time of seasonal employment, that more people are needed for cutting the grain, for cutting the grasses. So they may shift from one area to another. It may be rural to urban, which in most cases it happens. Sometimes it also happens from urban to the rural areas. And another migration option can be from one urban area to another urban area. Urbanization is actually the result of increased migration, and over a period of time it is, although right now about 72% of our population lives in the villages, but it is estimated that by 2020 probably it would be equally divided between the urban and the rural sector. So more and more people would be migrating to the urban areas, and that would increase the urbanization. Migration as per se is not a bad option, because it helps to redistribute the workforce from areas of low employment and potential to the areas of high employment potential. So it increases the productivity of labor. Here they are not able to find work, so they migrate to another area where they are able to find work and enjoy a better and a good standard of living. So after we have discussed what is unemployment, disguised employment, seasonal employment, and the statistics regarding employment, we come to the concept of human resource development. Human resource development is the process of helping people to achieve their competencies and to actually achieve their potential, whatever they are capable of. That is human resource development. The greatest asset for any state is its human resources, that is its people. If the human resources of a state is not competent to achieve the desired target, then the state will not be able to get the best out of all its resources. So in order for the nation to progress, it is very important that the human resources should be encouraged and should be provided with opportunities to be able to realize their potential. Human resource development includes developing physical and mental capabilities of people and their economic, political, social status, creating infrastructure for providing education, healthcare and social welfare, and involving people in the developmental process. So human resource development has got many aspects to it. It may be physical, mental capabilities, then their economic and political and social status, creating infrastructure so that they have better education, healthcare, and their social welfare is taken care of. All these different aspects are a part of human resource development. There is a separate ministry that has been created for this, and it is known as the Ministry of Human Resource Development, that is MHRD. It designs programs for the target group for development of human resources, and it has also designed many such programs for rural India also, and the implementation of these programs are taken care of by MHRD, and it oversees how the programs are developing in different parts of the country. It takes corrective action. It designs not only new programs but also takes corrective action as far as the already existing programs are concerned. What is exactly that HRD entails? It entails physical fitness, that is related to physical effort, which is easily captured by the number of workers, their general health, number of man hours devoted to work. Then it also entails their skills, that is what kind of expertise they have, what kind of skills they have, what is their ability, how much they can be, they can increase their proficiency and their ability through training. And the third is attitude or the mindset. So basically human resource development entails their physical knowledge, their mental, that is physical mental knowledge, and their dexterity, that is their skills, as well as their attitude. Now we come to the productive use of labor. Labor productivity is higher in the modern industry, which is largely located in the urban areas rather than in the rural-based agricultural sector. This may be because in the urban sector, because of industrialization, there are more opportunities, and also there is a certain norm which is adhered to in the industrial sector, which may not be so in the rural sector. So that is why the labor productivity is higher in the urban sector. A shift away from agriculture towards manufacturing and services takes place both in terms of value added and workforce structure. And this involves a location shift of population from rural to the urban areas. So basically it is a distribution of resources, distribution of human resources, so that they go from places of low potential employment regarding employment to places of high potential regarding employment. However, at the same time, in case the industrial growth is sluggish, then it results in limited absorption of labor in the high productivity areas. Let us suppose that people shift from the rural areas to the urban areas, and if they are not able to find work there, or maybe they find work which is much below than what they are capable of doing, then in that case there is a limited absorption of this kind of a labor also. And then it can only be, the residual labor can only be absorbed in very low productivity activities in the urban sector. So it is not enough that they shift from the rural to the urban sector. It is also important that they should be able to find the employment opportunities in the urban areas. If they are not able to do so, then they have to accept work which may be lower than what they are capable of doing. But since there is no other opportunity available, so they would do that. So what it leads to is that if there is good industrialization taking place, then there would be more and more potential created for more and more jobs. Now there are different government programs which are there to increase the productivity of labor, and the government is very cognizant of the fact that the productivity of labor needs to be increased so that the country can progress, the country can achieve the growth rate that is envisaged by the planners. And for this, the government is embarking on a major skill upgradation program in rural India, which will drive long-term productivity. It is setting up institutes to train the dropout students in specific vocational skills like electrical repairs, plumbing and carpentry. Today, every village has got electric bore wells, electrical white goods, motorcycles, furniture, which need regular repair and maintenance. So that means the potential for this kind of work exists in the rural areas, and the government is stepping in to train people who would be able to provide these services of repairing the electrical goods because they are already there, and it is better to find people who can do the repairing work in the village itself rather than get somebody from the urban areas. Each of the 621 districts is getting one such institute with central government funding. Rupees 23,000 crore on bank credit is made available to rural skilled manpower for starting their own work. However, sadly, most of it remains unutilized. There may be many factors for it, why the allocated funds remain unutilized. Maybe they are not able to generate the kind of enthusiasm which the rural people need for self-employment, and they may not be willing to take those kind of risks. So that is why they are not able to start their own work. But with proper and appropriate training, it would be possible for them to take up these kind of take up new assignments, new work, which would be in keeping with their potential and also help to increase their productivity. Now, how is the productive use of skilled labor being done? Some examples. There is a Rajiv Gandhi Seva Kendra in every village panchayat. It's supposed to be set up. These centers will have computers and internet connectivity, which will provide employment to educated youth in these centers to do various kind of job on the computer. So they would be present there in these village panchayats with their computers and which will have internet connectivity, and they would do the work which is required of them, and they will be paid for it. It is in the rural areas through the rural programs that large employment opportunities for the educated manpower can become available. The rural works program will make a large demand for people with education. Let us say there is a civil works work going on. Then it would require people with, doing the electricity work, people doing the plumbing work. So these are the kind of opportunities that would become available to them. At the same time, some architects would be needed who would be looking at the design of the building and overseeing that the work is progressing satisfactorily. So many of these kind of jobs can be created in the rural sector, which would require skilled manpower. So for doing this kind of work, people who are already educated, they can be put through short periods of training for very specific kind of work. The scope for regular and continuous employment within the rural economy will greatly increase with the development of cooperatives for credit, marketing, farming, growth of processing industries, development of scientific agriculture. So each of these activities would involve the growth of skilled manpower also. So once they are specifically trained for this sector, then accordingly they would be able to put in their best, and that would be the most productive use of labor that can be possible in the rural areas. Similarly, young people with education can set up industries at rural centers, and for this, of course, it is very important that the path should be made available to them. These industries should be organized on a cooperative basis so that the necessary financial and technical guidance can be provided and the marketing of the produce organized. Because once they are doing it as part of the cooperative, then a lot of the nitty-gritties of the marketing, of setting up the industry, of making the bank credit available to them, that all can be taken care of through the cooperatives. And at the same time, they can be trained for setting up their own industries. That would help to also increase the productivity of labor. There will be increasing opportunities for employment at levels of income which are comparable in real terms with those available in the towns. So sitting in the rural areas, they would be able to generate an income which is comparable to what they would get in the urban areas. Yet at the same time, that would not involve a location redistribution. So the same people can be employed right there in their own village, in their own setup, so that they can still be productive and at the same time earn an income which is what they would have earned in the urban areas. Now we come to the productive use of unskilled labor. The greatest scope for utilizing manpower resources in rural areas lie in programs of agricultural development, road development projects, village housing, and provision of rural amenities. As you know, India is primarily an agricultural economy. So more of agricultural development would bring more opportunities. Similarly, because rural India does not have road connectivity, so more road development projects would also provide more employment opportunities. Then village housing, and as you know, Pura, which is providing urban amenities in rural areas, that would also enhance the employment potential. It would create more job opportunities in the rural areas. A lasting solution of the problem of underemployment will not only require universal adoption of scientific agriculture, but also the diversification and strengthening of the rural economic structure. Programs for developing village and small industries, linking up the economy of villages with the growing urban centers, setting up processing industries on a cooperative basis, and carrying new industries into the rural areas are all these different measures by which rural industrialization can increase. And for that, of course, it is very important that rural electrification should also be present, so that the industries can constantly make use of the electricity and be able to enhance their potential, have products which can be marketed better because they are working on a cooperative basis, and that would help to create employment opportunities for the unskilled labor also. All these require a comprehensive works program in rural areas, and more specifically in those where there is a heavy pressure of population on land and considerable unemployment and underemployment. As I told you before, NREGA has proved to be a boon for the rural unemployed to get work, and the scheme has become a savior for the rural poor in most parts of the country. Now we come to the aspect of upgrading the skills, upgrading the knowledge and the attitude of the labor force. And regarding vocational training, let's try to understand what exactly is the meaning of vocational training. What is this concept? Vocational training refers to the imparting of specialized skills and knowledge essential for successful economic activity for people engaged in dependent employment, or those who are self-employed, or those who are doing subsistence work. A better future is possible for the rural poor if they are given training to tap other income generation opportunities apart from farming. For they may not be adept at doing other kind of work. For that, they can be provided training so that they are able to take up different kinds of employment. According to the Constitution of India, the central government and the state governments share responsibility for vocational training. 17 ministries and departments are involved in the provision and financing of vocational education and training in India, with a total annual training capacity of about 28 lakh students. There are different types of vocational training, and this can be dependent upon the way it has been acquired. there is a formal training which refers to all training courses held in state or private institutions and regulated by state guidelines. Non-formal training covers all forms of training which takes place without being subject to state guidelines. That is the in-company apprenticeship, both in formal or informal sector enterprises, is one of the most common forms of non-formal training. This kind of training also includes all programs and projects offering upgradation of those already active on the labor market, but those who wish to extend their competencies by attending weekend courses are also part of the non-formal training. Then there is informal training, which is separate from formal and non-formal training, and this denotes practical training in the family of traditional, largely unsystematic learning in small and micro enterprises in the informal sector. That is something which is being passed on from one generation to the next. This is done very informally. There is no specific guideline, there is no specific course that is followed, but this is passed on from one generation to the next, from the father to the son or to the daughter. It is considered unsystematic in the sense of having no deliberately devised curriculum. So there are different kinds of training that can be imparted. It can be formal, it can be informal, it can be non-formal. So there can be so many different types of training that can be imparted to the students. Now, what is the criteria for vocational training? There is actually no prerequisite for anyone to acquire vocational training. Both men and women can get trained at any time during their life. Studies have already proven that formal education is not the prerequisite for acquiring practical skills for income generation, especially in the context of the informal sector. You don't really have to be educated to a certain level to be able to acquire those kind of training. You can still be imparted the training even if you are not educated. However, India's formal vocational training system often creates minimum educational requirements, leading to the exclusion of those with lower levels of education. So in India, vocational training normally requires some basic education. If that is not present, then those people are excluded from vocational training. Normally what happens is that vocational training and vocational education are normally used interchangeably, but that is not the case. They are two separate concepts, and they are also administered by different ministries of the government. Now let us understand what is the difference between vocational education and vocational training. Vocational education this falls under the Ministry of Human Resource Development, that is the MHRD. The ministry oversees vocational courses being offered in school grade 11 and 12 under a centrally sponsored scheme called Vocalization of Secondary Education. Only the schools which are affiliated to CBSE offer the courses in accordance with the board's scheme of studies and the course structure. The courses are of 2 years duration and they span 6 major disciplines. Some examples of vocational education courses are dairying, farm machinery and equipment, accounting and auditing, electrical technology, air conditioning and refrigeration, X-ray technician, healthcare and beauty culture, preservation of fruits and vegetables, food services and management. These are some of the courses which are offered through vocational education, and this is offered at the class level and 12th level. Vocational training, on the other hand, refers to certificate level crafts training and is open to students who leave school after completing anywhere from grade 8 to the 12th. Programs administered under the Craftsman Training Scheme are operated by the ITIs, that is the Industrial Training Institutes, and the Industrial Training Centers. Directorate General of Employment and Training, that is the DGET, under the Ministry of Labour and Employment, is the nodal department for formulating policies, laying down standards, and other technical requirements for vocational training. The ITIs, both public and private, operate under the general guidance of DGET. There are other bodies also which are associated with vocational training. One of them is Central Apprenticeship Council, that is the CACC, which is the statutory body, and the National Council of Vocational Training, that is NCVT, a non-statutory body which operate as advisory institutions. The most important function for NCVT is it establishes and awards national trade certificates in engineering and non-engineering trades, prescribes standards for the syllabus, it arranges the trade tests and lays down the standards of proficiency required for the national trade certificate. It gives recognition to the training institutions for the purpose of issuing national trade certificates and laying down conditions for such recognition. The state councils for vocational training as well as the trade committees have been established to assist the NCVT. They advise the state government on training policy matters and are supposed to coordinate vocational training in each state. So the vocational training has got several bodies which are associated with it, some in an advisory capacity, some in a more policy-making capacity, so that the vocational training that is imparted to the students is in keeping with what is the requirement of the industry. The curricula for vocational training, 70% of the time is devoted to practical work and the rest is for theory. The Central Staff Training and Research Institute at Kolkata is responsible for the preparation of the curriculum and their revision from time to time. And for this, it takes the approval of the NCVT. The periodicity of the revisions, that is from time to time the curricula is revised. It depends upon the technological changes that are taking place in the industry in each of the trades. So in response to the changes that are taking place, they revise the curricula. And it is based on the recommendations made by the NCVT, which, as I told you earlier, it has other statutory bodies which are acting as advisors, and the non-statutory bodies also are there which are associated with it, so that together they devise the curricula and it is in keeping with the requirement of the industry. However, this is as far as the broad framework of the vocational training is concerned. But what we find at the ground level, the reality is totally different, or to some extent definitely there are some aberrations. Some of them which I would like to tell you about. Most of the curricula followed at institutes imparting vocational training have little relevance for wage or self-employment of the trainees. For instance, plumbing courses which have been running for the past 5 decades continue to be taught irrespective of the market demand for plumbers in that region. Similarly, let us say the region around Haldwani, which is very fertile, a lot of agricultural activity takes place there. There are hundreds of tractors in the area, but not a single ITI or any other vocational training institute that offers a course for tractor machinery repair. Now this is the need of that area, and yet that is not done. There is no provision for any kind of flexibility to tailor the courses around local vocational training demands. So when we are talking of vocational training, then it should also involve the practicality of the situation in which the training would be required. But yet that is not always done. Although they do revise the curricula from time to time, yet it does not take care of the demands of that local area where the ITIs are located. The other lacuna of vocational training are the present set of skills being taught at various vocational training institutes are not fetching gainful employment. Therefore, few students opt for vocational stream. Moreover, the vocational entry requirements and long duration of the courses exclude the underprivileged informal sector workers, because for the underprivileged, the important thing is not to study but to start earning. And if they have to spend a long period of time in getting trained, then they would not like to opt for it. Secondly, the minimum educational requirements also deters some people from joining the vocational stream. Thirdly, that there are some of the courses that are offered, they do not offer employment. After having done the courses, they do not get gainful employment, so they like to opt out of such kind of vocational streams. Secondly, there is limited or almost no participation of the industry in contributing to the curricular development, even though they are the ones who will finally become the employers. So their requirements should be incorporated into the training curricula, yet it is not done. The ITIs and other institutes have such a bureaucratic approach that by the time any recommendation from the industry find their way into practice, they have already become irrelevant, because there is so much of technical upgradation constantly which is going on. By the time they incorporate into their educational programs, it's already become outdated and the industry has already moved on to the next level. Industrial associations that integrate small and micro enterprises of the unorganized sector are also not consulted when they are devising their vocational education curricula. Problems that are encountered in vocational training. Income generation for the rural unemployed is generally a necessity, and that too with the present skills. Effort is directed at sustaining the business at the minimum level, that there is hardly any time and energy left for advanced training, linking up with other businesses, thinking of cost saving and pooling mechanisms, credit facilities and other avenues for expansion of business. So basically they do not have the financial muscle or the deep pockets to be able to devote time to training and leave their present occupation, or devote their energies to some acquiring new training, because they have to sustain at whatever is the present level. That is an economic necessity for them. So that is why this is one of the aspects which hinders the vocational training being acquired by the people who do need it, yet because they do not have the financial independence to do so, so they do not opt for it. Now, what would be the proactive approach to vocational training? The vocational training should be for empowerment and not only for employment. Training for empowerment would build up capabilities in people to shift from one profession to another, to obtain the freedom to make choices without losing status. So basically what it entails, it does not entail linking vocational training only with employment, but to build up the capabilities so they are empowered to take decisions that when they want to make use of their vocational training, they would do so. So it is more for empowerment, it's more for building up the capabilities of the person. Training for empowerment helps the trainees understand the market, the linkages with the producers, suppliers and the buyers, their own role and position to generate income and the various possibilities to do so. So it basically, vocational training gives them a macro picture of how their role would be in the whole wide scenario of where there are buyers, there are suppliers, there are consumers, and how they will relate with each of these different aspects of business. So it is more for empowerment, more for capacity building, rather than only linking it to employment. Now the corporate has also been active in this area of vocational training. How they do it and how they like to support vocational training is, employers first pick up candidates from rural areas for jobs based on their aptitude, direct them to educational courses to develop those particular skills that are needed, and on completion of their courses, they employ them. For instance, TMI First, a company based in Tamil Nadu, identifies the skills required for specific jobs and arranges to send the candidates to selected institutes for appropriate courses. The training institutes are identified based on a number of criteria, that is, their training content, the reputation of the training institute, the infrastructure, and the availability of suitable trainers. There are basically three models for meeting the cost of these courses. Either it is the employers who pay, or it is that the student can pay, or it can be that the government can pay. So it all depends on the kind of arrangement that has been worked out for offering these kind of vocational courses. But this kind of approach is any day more practical, much more meaningful, and it would definitely entail creating more job opportunities, more and more people opting for vocational courses, acquiring vocational training, so that they are able to find better job prospects, not only for themselves but also create job opportunities for others, and that also in their own village, in their own setup, in their own sector. So these are some of the approaches by which vocational training can be made more practical and more applicable for the people, for the target audience, for the people for whom it is intended. So in conclusion, we can say that rural economy is suffering from a high degree of unemployment problems, which includes disguised employment, and the answer is rural industrialization. NREGA has provided a much needed relief to the rural people in search of employment in their own village. The works program can be planned during the slack agricultural season. So the time when the agriculture would be not a very important activity, because of most of the region is dependent upon rainfall. So that is the time when the works program can be taken up, and that would help to provide them opportunities during the slack season. Gainful employment reduces the rural-urban migration, urban poverty, social distortions, and urban unemployment. And also the pressure on the urban areas would be reduced, because in that case people would find gainful employment in their own area. The other avenues for rural employment can be dairy farming, poultry farming, fisheries, rope weaving, beekeeping, food processing, and a host of other such vocations which can get them employment. Vocational training can be provided for non-agricultural employment also. So basically, the productive use of labor involves not only giving them the capacity building to work in the present area with much more dedication and be more gainfully employed in their present occupation, but also provide them more opportunities for the future so that they are able to be more productively employed and be able to make a significant contribution to the national economy, at the same time improve their own standard of living. Thank you very much.